Have you ever bought a piece of furniture for a house you didn't own yet? Or maybe packed a suitcase for a trip you hadn't even booked?
That sounds like a recipe for disappointment, or just wishful thinking.
Usually, yes, but in the text we're looking at today, Isaiah 54 through 58, that kind of premature celebration is actually a command. We start with this incredibly striking image of a barren woman being told to sing and expand her tent.
It's a powerful paradox to open with. You have this figure representing a desolate people, someone who feels completely empty and unproductive. And God doesn't say, wait until things get better to celebrate. He says, enlarge your tent right now. Lengthen the cords. Drive the stakes in deeper. It's aggressive preparation for a blessing that hasn't arrived yet.
It really sets the tone for this whole section. It's not just about comfort, it's about a radical shift in mindset. There's this promise that the shame of the past, the widowhood, as the text puts it, is going to be completely forgotten.
Exactly. And the reason for that confidence is fascinating. The text compares this promise to the days of Noah. Just as God swore never to flood the earth again, he's swearing a covenant of peace here. It says that even if the mountains themselves get up and move, this kindness isn't going anywhere. It's a level of security that feels almost impossible to grasp in a volatile world.
Speaking of things that are hard to grasp, we have to talk about the marketplace in chapter 55. This might be one of the most famous invitations in ancient literature.
Come, everyone who thirsts. But here is the kicker. Bring no money. It's an economic absurdity. You have an invitation to buy wine and milk, luxuries and staples, without cost. It completely deconstructs the idea of transactional religion. You can't buy your way into this. You just have to be thirsty enough to show up.
It reminds me of that line later in the chapter about God's thoughts being higher than our thoughts. We are so wired for work equals reward, but this operates on a totally different plane.
Right. It explicitly says that as the heavens are higher than the earth, that's the gap between our logic and God's logic. And that gap isn't just about mystery, it's about effectiveness. The text uses this beautiful imagery of rain and snow. They don't fall from the sky and then just float back up. They water the earth and make things grow. God is saying his word is exactly like that. It's not empty talk. If he says it, it accomplishes the mission.
So we have this massive open invitation, but usually when you have a free-for-all, there's still a bouncer at the door, right? There's usually fine print about who is actually welcome.
That is where chapter 56 throws a curveball. In the ancient world, there were strict rules about who could enter the assembly. Foreigners and eunuchs were typically on the outside looking in. But here, the script flips. The text specifically addresses the eunuch who feels like a dry tree with no legacy.
I love that image, the dry tree. It's so hopeless.
It is, but God says, if you keep my covenant, I'll give you a name better than sons and daughters. It's an everlasting name. And the foreigners, they get brought to the holy mountain. This is where we get that famous phrase, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples. It's radical inclusivity based on loyalty, not lineage.
But, and there is always a but, while the outsiders are being invited in, the insiders are getting a pretty harsh performance review.
Harsh is an understatement. The leaders, the watchmen, are described as blind. The text calls them mute dogs who can't bark. They're just sleeping and feeding their own appetites. It's a biting critique of leadership that enjoys the perks of power, but ignores the responsibility to warn and protect the people.
That contrast carries into chapter 57, doesn't it? You have these leaders seeking pleasure, and then the people falling into idolatry. The imagery there gets pretty dark, sacrificing under trees, abandoning their heritage.
It's a chaotic scene. But even in the middle of that accusation, there's a gem of hope. God describes himself as the high and lofty one who inhabits eternity. That sounds distant, right? But then he says he dwells in two places, the high and holy place, and with the one who has a contrite and humble spirit.
That brings us to the climax in chapter 58. This is the part that I think challenges modern readers the most. It addresses people who think they are doing everything right. They are fasting, they are acting religious, but they are frustrated because God isn't answering.
This is the true fast chapter. It's devastatingly practical. The people ask, why have we fasted and you haven't noticed? And God's response is essentially, because while you're fasting, you're exploiting your workers. You're fighting, you're acting pious, but your life is full of oppression.
It redefines the mechanism of worship. It's not about the ritual of starving yourself, it's about the result of your life.
Precisely. The text lists what a real fast looks like. Loose the bonds of wickedness. Undo the heavy burdens. Let the oppressed go free. Share your bread with the hungry. Bring the homeless into your house. It shifts the focus from vertical piety, look how holy I am, to horizontal justice.
And the promise attached to this is beautiful. It says if you do that, if you stop pointing fingers and start feeding people, then your light will rise in the darkness.
And you get a new title. You go from being the mute dog or the barren woman to being called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in.
That feels like the ultimate answer to the emptiness we started with in chapter 54. You don't just fill your own tent, you rebuild the whole city for everyone else.
Exactly. It tells us that true spirituality isn't an escape from the world. It's the fuel to fix it. If your worship doesn't lead to justice, according to this text, it's not worship at all.
A heavy but hopeful note to end on. We've gone from expanding tents to breaking chains.
It's a lot to process. But it definitely makes you rethink what you're doing when you say you're seeking God.
Absolutely. Thanks for walking through this with me.
Anytime. If you have been blessed by this, please like, subscribe, and share this joy with others. God bless.